Thank you guys for having me. I am excited to be here. So, as Shelley said, I used to be an anti-vaxxer. Um, I was what they call an anti-vax influencer, which is probably the grossest thing I could say. I tell people I never dreamed of doing that. When I was little, I wanted to be a dentist. So, this was kind of thrust upon me. I made a post one day and it just took off. These are kind of things I posted. I dressed as the measles in 2019, and obviously measles is scary, so I came up with a dumb caption. Was trying to think of the least scary thing I could be, so I became the measles. That's how I found out what Reddit was. And I told my brother and said, "I'm on the front page of Reddit. Is that bad?" And he was like, "Just get off the internet right now. Redeem yourself." But I did. I continued. So yeah, I loved that one in the corner. I'm not vaccine hesitant. I'm quite certain I don't want them. I thought it was hilarious. Who I actually was, I was terrified. My daughter is 5, that's Charlotte. She had severe sleep apnea of 144 units per hour. I didn't sleep much. We were in West Texas. She had 30,000 ACs a day. I was just completely terrified that she would die. And so when I stumbled upon the anti-vax disinformation that promised that she would help me for life, I was like, I'm not a monster, I'm not going to vaccinate her. Okay. What can a parent what I need that vaccinate my child? I had no community support or community advice, so I found this community online. It was incredible. They supported me. They came up with answers for her health problems. They said it's because you have a medication. That's why she has these issues. And we're going to help you detox her. And these are the answers to all of your whys and why is this happening? We got you. I can't find that in the medical community. I can't find that with my LPGN. My pediatrician brushed me off. I'll get into that in a second. But they were there for me. But you have to understand, I was also terrified of tetanus, as you should be. So I Googled the fatality rate of that. I didn't want to do that. So I lived in just a state of horror. Whenever she cut herself, I was thinking, well, I can't give her the tetanus shot because she'll die. But also, I can't let her have tetanus because she'll die. So it was just scary. I wasn't trying to be this awful person on the internet. I just found my people and community and really wanted to keep my baby alive. That was it. So how I went from getting all of my vaccines to hating them. Me and my 3 brothers grew up getting all of them. They still hate needles. I mean, I do too. They literally pass out. So, I mean, it's not funny, but I do. Anyway, so we got all of our vaccines. I got my flu shot when I was 25. I mean, I never really thought that anything bad would happen. I just don't like them. But I started Facebook Innovation Line, Angel Fears, and they offered a docu-series as an ad called The Truth About Vaccines. And it was 7 hours of doctor after doctor claiming to be middle ground. I think there's a pediatrician in Washington that does that. But he and all of them just said if you avoid vaccines, you'll avoid cancer, autoimmune diseases, allergies, common cold, autism for sure, all of it. And that's fine, but these diseases aren't that bad. Like they said, measles was cured because we had clean drinking water finally, and you really shouldn't be that scared of measles. And you really understand episode on it. It's fine. So by the time I watched the whole thing, I was like, like I said, I'm not a monster. I don't want to be perfect from any form of disease or common cold or anything. So of course I'm going to vaccinate my kids. I wasn't pregnant at the time when I saw this, but I had pretty much decided that we women were vaccinated whether they get pregnant. So what can be done? Nothing. So the response from my medical providers, I went to my OB-GYN and I was supposed to get my tetanus shot, and I just kind of brought up my questions about polysorted eating. I thought I sounded so smart. He hadn't heard of that. I mean, he had heard of the word polysorted eating, but he hadn't heard of this question. So he just said, "Oh my God, I'm one of those crazy internet surgeons." And just the blood drained from my face, and I just shut down on that. Well, definitely not going to talk to him about this. And And so I continued on. I wanted to talk to him about, well, why is polysorbating bad? Can you break that down for me? And he did not know what I was talking about at all. So once my child was born, we had the vaccine appointment with my pediatrician, and I told her about the docu-series, and she just said, I'm not going to talk about that. I won't watch that. I'm not going to. So I was so mad right away. And that was before I ever even posted online. I had a window of opportunity because I just wanted to be like a real life, which most people do. So when you're talking to investors, it's not the enemy. If they also want to keep their kids safe. What made me change my mind? So I had an baby. I posted on Facebook. I became the anti-vaccinator. COVID hit, and then all of my followers started protesting masks, which I was like, oh, kind of ridiculous. And they said, there's chemicals in masks, and if you wear a mask, then our kids are not going to be able to see people's facial expressions, so they're not going to develop correctly. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit dramatic. Maybe calm down. I can't save a whole life by wearing a mask. I just kind of started to see a sense of entitlement and kind of started getting cringed out the whole thing and kind of backing away. And that is when I stumbled upon, and I posted about it, which if you're part of the anti-vax cult, you're either all in or you're all out. I was kind of the devil who posted about this Tylenol one time, and I was oh, you want to lose me? So, I started losing a lot of followers. We would use antibiotics instead of just all that stuff, and I was starting to think, well, maybe these people are not actually monsters. At the time, I thought most doctors, definitely politicians, wanted our kids dead, or just didn't care. They just wanted money, and they just horrible people. I wouldn't trust in any of their times, that's for sure. But I started reading the vaccine book, which is kind of funny. Dr. Robert Sears is an anti-vaxxer. I didn't know that though. So I'm not really a reader, so I didn't read it. The first part of the book it talks about diseases and how bad they are, and how vaccines have side effects, but they're really rare. But he did acknowledge, this can happen. But these are the odds of it happening, which I thought, okay, you're not gaslighting me. You're acknowledging that sometimes things happen. And that built my trust. And I don't know, the first part of that book just built my trust. The second part is when he tears down vaccines and he shows how he's an anti-vaxxer, but I never got to that part. So thank you, Dr. Sears. So then I started messaging some of my scientists and doctor friends on Facebook, and they were kind of started to red flag me at first. They were thinking, oh, you're gonna screenshot me and try to ruin my reputation. I'm not gonna respond to you, but I did. And I thought, okay, so maybe vaccines are not that bad, but that's good for you. That's good for your kid. But I'm still not going to kill it because I know these things about vaccines that you never get around, because I have science on my side, and I know from this scenario. So I will give you the things I'm scared of, and maybe you can try to talk your way out of it. Probably won't, but we'll try. And so I talked to scientists about my fear of aluminum. Anti-vaxxers believe that aluminum will slip past the blood-brain barrier and cause inflammation, and therefore the second case of autism. And that's their reasoning for that. But he said, the studies that show aluminum in the brain show environmental aluminum. Guaranteed in the method section of every single study that neurovaxxers quote or cite, it is always environmental or some other than aluminum. It is never aluminum. Chemicals can only pass the blood-brain barrier if they're fat soluble, like alcohol and caffeine. Vaccine aluminum is not, and vaccine aluminum is too big to pass through it. So it's just physically impossible. So it's like, okay, well, so I will offer them another fact. What about polysorbating? Basically you've got your enclosed amount of aluminum, there's scientists, and then it would just kind of sneak its way through the blood-brain barrier because polysorbating can obviously open that. And he was like, well, actually not really. So 40 years ago or so, there was a study done that suggested given enough polysorbate feeding, you could open up the blood-brain barrier, which is really exciting for cancer drugs, for brain cancer and things like that. They're still working towards all of that, but that's not very simple, Heather. We can't just do that. He said if you took an average newborn, you would need about 3,600 hepatitis B vaccines injected straight into their neck to even have a chance. I was like, okay, well, what about formaldehyde then? That's poisonous. And he said, no, we need that for our metabolism. Babies had about 1,500 times the amount of any of them unknown formaldehyde that they would receive in any given vaccine. So, it's very fun. So by the time that was done, I jotted all those down and thought, okay, if I can hold on to these facts, then all of my fears maybe kind of fall apart a little bit. And that's exactly what happened. I decided to vaccinate. So I made a post, I lost all my followers, it took off. And I just made so many good connections with people that cared. I started to realize that doctors care about kids. That was hard for me to connect. And that they really love their own kids and the kids in their practices and they're good people. They didn't get into this because they hate kids. My pediatrician let me in. He to this day, I'm sure he still thinks I'm completely unhinged, but he gave me a cell phone number and he said, anything that she needs too many times, text me after her first shot, and I'm here, I will respond. That helped me so much, so I wasn't left to Google it, and just have a panic attack. I tell people after her first shot, she had more energy and a bigger appetite, so that's what the polio shot does. But Dr. Paul Offit, he's somebody else that I think turns into a lizard at night. But Dr. Paul Offit let me call him on his phone the day of my shot, which fangirl. I freaked out again. I'm sure he does also think I'm unhinged. But he was like, it's scary. Anxiety is normal because you're a human and you're a parent, and that's normal. You're not abnormal here. It's just gonna be fun. And that was so helpful just to be a human and recognize that this is not weird. You're injecting a needle into your head. It's a little scary. It's not fun for anybody. And then I will die on myself. Allow the slow schedule at least at first. Because if my doctor had said, okay, I know that you were completely terrified, but we're going to get a chronic right now, I would have gone back to becoming an anti-vaxxer or being an anti-vaxxer. Me and Lydia started slow at first, and then it's kind of like, okay, this isn't normal, let's just do more at the same time. But I tell people, it's so frustrating to have somebody want to come once a month or something like that, and you say, no, you have to do the fast schedule, the normal schedule, not fast schedule. If you say that, it could potentially go around and find people that do want them online, and they can completely become anti-vaxxers. And so by the time that they're 5 years old, you would have had a full vaccinated child. But now you have an anti-vax mom with an unvaccinated child. So for Kansas Immunization Coalition, for Immunize Kansas Coalition, me and Lydia wrote a booklet. We basically took, we took every fear that we had discovered as anti-vaxxers, and we wrote it in normal non-doctor talk. So it's very easy to understand, but Kansas is trying to distribute this booklet to all of the pediatric offices and the waiting rooms. So this is a good resource. Just basically, and we tackle a lot of the COVID fears, just COVID cause sudden adult death syndrome, this COVID cause infertility, and just why it doesn't, and all the facts and scatter sources and things like that. So that's been a really interesting project to work on. And then finally, don't lose hope. There is a sliding scale that I like to tell people. You have the hesitant people, or the hesitant parents on this side. You have the crunchy parents in the middle that are bed sharing, looking at everything, who are sober. And then you have the conspiracy theories, which are what I read on by television and called me lizard people. That was embarrassing, but that is them. And a lot of people are like, well, how can I get them to change? That it's impossible. That they're like, how am I going to get a conspiracy theory to change? Well, that is a very small percentage of the population. So just focus on this side. You can definitely get them, and you can possibly get them. Don't worry about this because that's going to waste a lot of your time if you're trying to convince them that people are doing things. That's weird. So that's going to be hard. So focus on this side, and then you're not going to waste as much energy and time and emotions, and they're way more likely to convert. I dressed as measles. I had thousands of followers that asked me how to fake exemptions, and I never answered. Thank goodness, that would be a legal nightmare. But just that was who I was. I was so off the charts, awful. I tell people I was the worst anti-vaxxer that I know, and I am here, so it is not impossible. That is my contact info. You can reach out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Hello everyone, I'm Lydia Green, Heather's partner in Back to the Vax, and I came all the way from Canada to share my story with you. So the issue is addressing specifically COVID vaccine hesitancy right now, and just observing on social media. I'm addicted to Twitter, and I have a Facebook group, and so I've noticed some common themes along the way. And why isn't the evidence enough? So I polled our group because a lot of them are returning to their regular childhood vaccinations, but they're still really hesitant on COVID vaccines. So some of the basic, like I'm sure you've heard these, infertility, menstrual changes, FDA issues. A lot of them think they don't work at all, and I try to let people know, like, no, it prevents serious disease, long COVID, even at MISC, we know that. Fear of mRNA, so hopefully for the younger age groups, I'm not sure if that's on the way or not for Novavax, but I think that would also enable some children to get vaccinated. Some parents think the sample size is really small, but when I looked, it looked comparable to other vaccines, but that's their belief, so maybe share like, no, this is how it's done for all vaccines. And I think the biggest hurdle of all is that parents think COVID is harmless. They really do. They think it's just a cold, that they'll recover fast, that they'll get immunity and won't need a vaccine. And the issue isn't just nonsense conspiracy sites. There are outspoken, contrarian doctors, MPHs that are talking on this to parents and telling them that COVID isn't a big deal and the vaccine is risky. So they are afraid. They usually have no experience in treating children at all. They've never seen a child seriously ill with COVID. They use mortality statistics and leave out morbidity, and this is a very common anti-vax tactic. They don't talk about the secondary infections that follow or immune dysregulation. They're not talking about any of that when they address people. They don't compare, and I really think it's important to compare for the diseases we already vaccinate for. Most parents are vaccinating their children. Not like the anti-vax, fortunately, is still a very small portion of people, but there is a lot of COVID hesitant parents out there. So if they're choosing to vaccinate their children, you can compare the vaccine to the vaccines they've already given their kids in terms of the protection they can give their children. For instance, I know there are a few diseases on the schedule that are less lethal than COVID. COVID is proven more lethal, and they choose those vaccines. So I think framing helps. I think there's a proximity bias, even if you've seen in your own kids or your friends' kids that they were fine their first time, then you're more likely to think it's not a big deal. But I think people don't know that every time you catch COVID, roulette. It's a bad lottery that, and just because you had an easy time once doesn't guarantee an easy time again. So the power of the anecdote, this is how the anti-vax movement scares parents. They will use very emotionally driven anecdotes. Oftentimes they're not even true. So they will use a video of an epileptic child having a seizure, label that as a COVID vaccine reaction. It's shared hundreds of thousands of times. And so people are thinking that that is a vaccine reaction when it was just like stock footage even of a child who has epilepsy. And this will evoke an emotional response. Nobody wants that to happen to their children. I think we can use this to our advantage because we tend to lean on facts and science, but there are stories that people want to share of their own children's horrible experience with COVID. I've talked to parents whose children have died, and they want to share their experience. We can use that to our advantage to hopefully inspire parents to vaccinate. I had an experience with my own kids with COVID. I will use that. I use footage of my own child who had to go to emergency care. And I have 3 kids, they're 15, 7, and 4. And I've never seen a child that sick in my life until my youngest got COVID. So I will share that with other parents, especially in the comments of these contrarian doctors who are claiming it's harmless. So I got to learn in real time the importance of vaccination. My older 2 children were vaccinated. My youngest was too young when COVID hit our household. He had pneumonia, pink eye, ear infection, belly pain, super high fever. That's why I took him in. The medicine wasn't helping, and I panicked. I never saw my kid that sick ever. So he ended up getting diagnosed with pneumonia, and we were sent home with antibiotics. And it didn't stop him from getting it 4 months later, almost as bad, minus pneumonia. And he had long COVID symptoms, which scared me. He had these weird fatigue spells, and I called him, he was 5 pounds at birth, and I called him my 10 pounds of crazy in a 5-pound bag. Like, this kid is just go, 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 go. And he would randomly sit down and look at me, Mommy, I don't feel well. Mommy, what's wrong? And have to stop playing. And this is not like him. This kid stopped napping at 2. He's never tired. And it scared me. And both times he had COVID, he had these it took weeks to recover after the acute phase, which lasted a good 2 weeks for us. So I think it's worth getting a vaccine to prevent that. It doesn't necessarily have to do with preventing death, but that's a horrible experience that my child had to suffer, and he may not have had to. So the ideas are coming, and I think we all need to know where these ideas are coming from, because if you don't know it, you can't confront it when you hear it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can read for yourself. Dr. Prasad's an oncologist who can treat kids. He's anti-mask. He doesn't. He has a cancer clinic. Why would you? That's insane to me. He always throws the AAP under the bus and said public health is a public enemy. That he's quoted as saying that. He blocked me because I confronted him when he said that the AAP only talks about COVID. They don't care about the cause of death of anything else. And I quoted the AAP who just started a campaign against drowning, drowning prevention. And I said, what are you talking about? It was an instant block. But he won't block the commenters who say vaccines cause autism. He'll block me, but he won't block them because it's become this mutually parasitic relationship where they buy their Substack, buy whatever book is coming out, why would he? He's incentivized to let them spread their ideas on his platform. Macri is another one. He always says COVID is over. COVID is over. He's been saying it since 2020. And that we will return immunity. He was a fan of the Great Guarantee Declaration. Told parents only 3 kids died when it was hundreds at the time. and again, glosses over morbidity. They often use her to like talk about like stats. She's really good at massaging stats and making them look bad when that's not what the stats are actually saying. I thought it was interesting that last winter she was so terrified when her teenage son got COVID, and then this winter she was telling parents that they should let their kids get COVID, just get it out of the way. And I was like, how do you have that level of amnesia? I saw how terrified you were on Twitter when your team had it. And he says all you need is a healthy lifestyle. So that's a common crank thing where they'll tell parents you don't need vaccines, just eat your vegetables and exercise. I've noticed boards are toothless. They have policy on how you should manage yourself. This is Dr. Thorpe. He is very weird in his comments to me, you can see there. But he also went after my friend Kevin Alt, who I adore. I actually interviewed him about HPV vaccines. He used to be on the board for the ACIP, I think, and he is very knowledgeable on HPV, so I had him talk to our parents about that in our group. But yeah, and I reported this and worse things that he has said to the board, to ABOG. They don't do anything. I don't understand it. So I really think that's an issue everywhere, is that boards can't really do anything. If he's using his board certification to push serious misinformation, he tells people that vaccines cause miscarriage and stillbirth. And he says board certified OBGYN in his bio. So knowing where it's coming from, I think really is the key. I know you don't want to hear it. It's unsavory. I don't like it much myself. But they're not getting this just from conspiracy sites anymore. It's coming from people with titles after their name, MPH, MD, pediatrician, unfortunately. And so we have to know what they're saying to be able to handle it. And this is what I was afraid of happening, is that the COVID contrarianism would go after other vaccines. So Allison here is a COVID contrarian MPH. And here you can see, you can see she is going after HPV vaccines. Telling parents, if you just give them self-awareness and spirituality, and I think she says self-defense in one thing, and taking a bus versus begging for a ride, like what does this have to do with HPV vaccination? It makes no sense to me, but here she is giving parents this magic wand to avoid a vaccine. And we know that diet and healthy lifestyle are friends with vaccination, and actually probably help them work better. If you're healthy, you're going to respond better. But this is how it's going with these contrarians, is that they are going to start going after all of the vaccines to sell whatever they're selling. I said, I can't wait to see your delayed schedule that you recommend come out in your new book. She doesn't have one yet, but I can see that's where this is going. They've used the hierarchy of evidence. This is how they convince people. They'll have their, hour-long, like Heather said, 7-hour-long, video series to convince parents, and they borrow from the bottom of the pyramid and ignore everything at the top. And parents who are not understanding that science is a hierarchy can be easily tricked into thinking that vaccines are bad, because a study 20 years ago with 10 kids showed that it was bad. And there's studies with 600,000 kids that show the opposite, but they leave that out. So I try to simplify these concepts for parents. I know we all know about VAERS and how it's, there's no causation assigned, and they have to go through the data, because sometimes there's more than one report for this single event. So I try to explain that there's better databases like the Vaccine Safety Data Link, and just to remind them of the bigger picture. If you have 1,000 people out of 1 million that had a bad time, but it seems like there's a lot of them when they, conglomerate. But if, 1,000 people have a glass of water, some of them are going to get a new diagnosis of something. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the glass of water caused it. Or, but I like the sunburn one. Does ice cream cause sunburn? No. I mean, it's pretty correlated, but it doesn't. And just that every life still happens after vaccination. When I had my middle son vaccinated for COVID, the the night before he woke up screaming his head off because he had growing pains. And I think, what if that happened exactly one night later after I vaccinated him for COVID? Like, how would I feel about that? And so I try to share, like, life still happens, and sometimes it will coincide with the vaccine. So what helped me vaccinate with confidence, I really like the Vaxipedia website. I went through it when I was coming to terms with how wrong I was about vaccination. And lots of good references, and he really does know all of the tropes quite well. Reading other formerly anti-vaxxers' stories, I read them for hours. I didn't decide overnight to vaccinate my children. I really had to soul search. It was psychologically uncomfortable, and it took me a long time to get to that first appointment. And just seeing with time that my kids were okay, it became easier. And I had so many of you kind people support me through it as well. And hearing that they vaccinated their own children for COVID-19, even some of them put their kids in the clinical trials so that people could be confident in the vaccines, really helped me be confident in my choices. So I'm a nursing student now. I'm going to finish this fall, hopefully. And I am passionate about public health, not just vaccines, but all aspects of. I grew up poor with immigrant parents, faced a lot of social issues, and I think public health is needed to help people, and to a lot of these people don't even know these services exist, and I really want to be there for my own community and get the message out there. So the one thing is, like, we have to let people know that it's not harmless, and get personal with anecdotes, share your own experience, share that you're anxious too. It wasn't just them being anxious. Like, every parent's anxious when they have to do things to their kids that they may not like. And share, be honest about side effects. Like, yeah, my kid had, maybe a little rash or fever, or I know my daughter had a swollen lymph node for a few days each time. So, like, be honest about that, because it helps them realize that you took that leap of faith and it worked out, and nothing serious happened. And I think we need to be in the community more. That's not, time is on short supply, but we need to meet people where they're at. Community events where there's going to be children, maybe set up a booth and have parents be able to talk to you about their fears in a like non-clinical environment. I think that could help. Which it's scary out there, I get it, because there is a lot of vitriol toward us. I'm not unaware of that. I get a lot of it. And then our colleagues are saying things, and it's not easy to correct them. And even as a nursing student, I've had to correct other students on misinformation that they are spreading about COVID vaccines. And it's never fun to be that person, but I'm going to be that person, and I hope everyone can be that person, because when we don't say anything, I think it emboldens them to keep saying it. And I know that's not easy. And then exposing the grift. I'll give an example of one grifter, but there's a lot of them that have made a lot of money. John Campbell he's a PhD nurse, and he was very informative in the beginning. Said some things about ivermectin, got a huge follower account, continued to say the things about ivermectin, and then against vaccines. He's made $4 million on YouTube just by lying to people. So I like to expose that. Like, everyone's like, follow the pharma money. Well, what about that guy's money? He's like a millionaire. Why would he say anything otherwise? That's what got him the follower count to get that much money, because people are willing to pay to have their bias seen. This is why, they always call me a showman. I don't make anything doing this. It's not lucrative. I could change my mind again tomorrow and make thousands of dollars. I want to sleep at night, so I won't. But I could, because this is how the market demand for contrarian opinions, people are willing to pay for it. So what helped me we talk to healthcare providers a lot when we do our webinars on what they can do to better communicate. It's really hard to listen to it. I get it. And sometimes your face is like this, like for real. But try not to. Try to look more open and finish listening to them, because I know the idea is to like stop them because you don't want to breathe life into the myth that they are saying. But if you stop them, it will shut them down. So hear them out fully. Ask questions. Where did you hear that? I'm really interested. Like, can you tell me more? Like, what's your biggest fear? Like, even ask them to give you more information, because then it looks like you're interested in their anxiety and what they're worried about. My daughter needed medication once, and the doctor said, listen, just Google it, come back to me, and we'll talk about what you find. And I think doctors are so afraid of Google today. I'm like, but your patients are gonna do that. So just lean into it, because then they come to you with what they find instead of being, you don't want them afraid or embarrassed to come with you with the things that they find. You want them to feel comfortable, and she got ahead of it, and I just thought that was amazing. And just be available. I know we're all like don't have a lot of time. Maybe set up an email account so that you can answer at your own leisure. And then once you do answer the question, maybe put it on a blog so that if you get the same question later, the answers are there. And usually it's the first vaccine that you'll have to be available for. I know Heather's probably not calling the doctor now, but she's not like, doesn't have them on speed dial anymore when she vaccinates her kid. But the first couple times, she really did need to have that contact to feel secure in her choice. And again, that's how that goes. If you want to know more, like I am obsessed with these disinformation people, and they are obsessed with me equally, I think. If you follow me on Twitter, you will see that. So those are one is our group tag, and then the bottom one is mine. And then I don't mean to brag, but I'm in Dr. Jonathan Howard's book called We Want Them Infected. I don't know if you've heard of that book. He chronicles what went wrong with COVID from day one, and how these contrarian MDs have profited, and how they spread misinformation, and how many times they've been incorrect and laughably incorrect. It's a good book, so if you want to know more about the myths and stuff and how these things get spread, I really recommend this book. And thank you so much for listening to my story. Our website also has, like Heather and I have done a lot of talks together where we talk about our experience as anti-vax parents. I go more into detail on how I became an anti-vaxxer on our website, so if you're curious about that, you can check it out. But thank you very much.
Thank you both so much. So we have some time for question and answers with both Leah and Heather. I'm sure you guys want to pick their brains. So.
Hi, thank you so much. You're both so brave, and really appreciate hearing your stories. My organization, Boost Oregon, was founded specifically because we didn't see you as monsters, and we wanted to understand what was happening and to amplify parents' voices and to really get people away from the social media and the computer screens, and have those conversations. And we do a lot of medical provider trainings on exactly what you're advising folks here. It's so helpful. So my question is, we struggle a lot with social media because our sense has been we're not going to change minds with social media. I know that a lot of people get trapped into the anti-vax world through social media. And we want to flood social media with evidence-based information and good information, but sometimes that becomes a honeypot for anti-vaxxers to swarm in. And dealing with that is a full-time job on its own, and we're a tiny nonprofit that doesn't have those resources. So I'm curious, for the pro-vaccine crowd, what do you see as the most meaningful use of social media? How should we be using that as a tool and a resource to promote vaccines in ways that are not going to hand the anti-vaccine movement additional avenues?
Well, I answered this question, I think, in Oklahoma, and then conversation is with TikTok right now. But I've noticed if you jump on the trends with like Gen Z and millennials, the ridiculous trend. Did I do that? Or did it die? The ridiculous trends. Like I did this ridiculous dance. My mom was so embarrassed. And then while I did the dance, that had nothing to do with vaccine facts at all. I put the ingredients of the COVID vaccine and just simplified them with this table salt. That worked really well. And so I noticed a lot of pro-vax people try to get on social media by using like, do it for your community, this is safe and effective. And I just, no, that's not, that's really not relatable and it's boring. And nobody, that's the stuff that's going to attract fake anti-vaxxers. But getting in with we had a meeting with J&J last year and it was like a bunch of really old people and I just said, y'all have to be funnier. And they were really helpful. Good job, dumb. But yeah. That's what I would recommend, as long as it's not illegal or whatever.
And I have a funny story about that because they paid us, I think it was like $140 to like pick our brain for an hour, but they paid Heather American and they paid me Canadian. Oh. So I just thought that was really funny.
I did. For anyone who's from the Northwest. Any questions?
Catherine from California, and how did you two meet? I don't know if you heard that story.
I saw Heather, so I wrote something for like Voices for Vaccines, and then I saw Heather had written something, and I saw that her story was different from mine in enough ways that we could probably work together really well because we fell into this two very different ways, and I think that our experience kind of encompasses the broad experience of the anti-vax movement. So I tracked her down. Like, does anyone know this girl female? Because I have to find her. And so I tracked her down and I said, hey, we should really share our story together. So that's what we've been doing ever since. We got invited to do, I think, a webinar, and then we just kept getting invited back because people like us, I guess. Which also blows our mind. Like it blows my mind that I'm even here talking from. I literally live in the middle of nowhere, Alberta. Like there's one road in, one road out. It's such a small community, and there's nothing around. Like, and I'm here today talking about vaccinations. So that's really cool to me.
And then follow up on this, Heather wanted to expand on that. But and so one of the things that's really fascinating, and I talked to a lot of reporters about this, because reporters want to know why, what convinces particularly women to be leaders in this network community of Africa. This is kind of beyond anti-vax, right? It's a lot of things now. We've seen here. I have my thoughts, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what is motivating.
It's a lack of community. I'll say it like this. Women, new moms have no community. We are alone. We are in the trenches and dealing with it on our own. And then oftentimes we go talk to like medical professionals and we are gaslit. We are, told like, oh, it's just anxiety or it's just this, and it's really hard. And then you find this group, because I had trouble breastfeeding, so that's how I found mothering.com, which is a alternative natural parenting group, and they helped me. My doctor said, don't be so brokenhearted about it if it doesn't work out for you, and gave me no help. And I turned to this group of women online, and they helped me. So then, when my daughter had a reaction at 2 months, I called public health, and she blew me off. Said, I know you're just a first-time mom. You're kind of overreacting, but if you really thought it was an emergency, you would take her to the ER. And I was like, well, now I just feel embarrassed, and but still worried about my kid who continues to scream her head off constantly for the next 2 days.
And just to add, it's pretty lucrative for moms in the anti-vax world. This is an angle I don't think a lot of people don't recognize. A lot of my friends sold multi-level marketing, what's that other
Pyramid.
yeah, I didn't want to, yeah. But they would sell like pills to detox autism. They would post to try to, they would say outlandish things to try to get a ton of reactions to get a bigger following to sell more pills. So I had a lot of friends making 10 grand a month. And when you go from a single mom to that, I mean, this was lucrative for them. So the ruder the post, the crazier it went. And that, I mean, it's, I can do a whole thing on that. That's like the dark world. I think that's mom and dad sometimes, but
Thanks so much, guys, for speaking. I'm Eric Baum, Education. Lydia, just to address some things from Twitter from yesterday. Your hair looks good, and your accent is impeccable. So a lot of people here are public health folks. What advice do you have for them how to reach people like you guys used to be? Because you're so ingrained that you think there's a grand conspiracy for people to kill your kids to make money. Like, is there any message that's going to break through to you, or do we just have to ignore you guys and focus on kind of the hesitant middle ground?
I think we have to look for our opportunities before it gets to that point. I feel like in my journey while being pregnant in the healthcare system with a new baby, I think there was a lot of opportunity to make me feel welcome and have that level of trust there that I did not have because of these situations that happened to me. Heather and I, when we do our webinars, we talk a lot about knowing when the opportunity is there. It starts, in preconception, prenatal classes. That's why we wrote our booklet, because we want it to be given to new parents that have never actually heard these things before. So that when they do hear them in the real world, it's kind of like an inoculation against the misinformation that's out there. Because you're right, it's really difficult to reach someone like us, but it's not impossible, so you should still try.
and we're not, I know that I thought y'all wanted to kill kids, but we're not like that. We're not on the conspiracy side. That is still pretty crunchy hesitant. That's pretty common of a thought process. I will say, you don't have to. I mean, it is good to get them before they're, gone a little bit, but it's also good to know what they're talking about, like what they're going to come to do with. That LB that doesn't know what I was talking about before, don't do that. They really think that y'all only got Texas 1 hour of vaccine training in medical school. That is what everyone says to everyone in the vet world. So
I heard 7 minutes.
oh well, yeah, that's
Yesterday, I think the day before, they're like, did you know doctors only get 7 minutes of vaccine training in school? And I was like, that's not a thing.
I mean, my confidence level just completely dropped in medical professionals when that happened. So just, get ahead of what they're going to say to you. And know. Because if my OB-GYN had said, well, this is exactly what that's someone thinking, that's not my talk. So, if he had said that, then maybe I wouldn't be here. I don't know.
And just look at the week,
Just when they do bring up, like, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked that. I'm so glad you came to me. And really try to be open. Because, like, I know I had, when my daughter had a fever, she was 6 years old, she had a fever and a terrible ear infection. And I got asked, is your daughter up to date? And I said, no. And he said, do you want your daughter to die? And he looked at me with disgust. And I thought, well, no, but I don't think I'll come back here. He's, because he clearly think I'm a monster and I want my kid to die, even though I'm bringing her in because she has a fever. So I think we're coming a long way from that. That was years ago. I think public health is kind of starting to realize you can't talk to parents that way and that it further alienates them. But I wish there was a magic answer out there to get them to change their mind. But just, I think opening the barriers of communication and keeping them open definitely will help.
and then the next week, you have someone start back here.
Hi, I'm Amy, but Linda, I'm also
That never happens.
Thank you both for being here and for what you do. And one of the impactful school because of her experience. She's a nurse. Like her experience as a mom, first of all, especially, felt so isolated. And I think the magic is that's where we need to go. Is we need to help mom. We need to help parents and realize
We need to mother the
so
mother.
isolated.
I really do believe that. And a lot of cultures used to mother the mother. And I think we really do need to return to like holding that role in an esteem and not rushing people back to work 6 weeks later. I cannot believe that happens here. I could not imagine leaving a 6-week-old baby at a daycare to go back to like I really think we need to hold that role in higher esteem and take care of it honestly. Like it's hard. I left my city, I had to start over, had a lucrative scientific career before I left, and I had to rebrand myself. And like it was kind of like a rebirth, and unfortunately I fell into the wrong hands, and I really think we need to take care of moms.
Hi, thanks again for being here. My name's Maria, I'm a pediatrician in Washington. And first, I'd like to know if you get your visit to have
Yeah,
our pediatric rooms. And secondly, I think as pediatricians, the big barrier for us is time. You know, we love to have long talks about all of these things and just don't have the time. So wondering if there was a venue, if our clinic put on something like that and invited folks to come, do you think that would be something that would be amenable and people would be open to? Or the thought I have is that, oh, they're doctors, they have an agenda, they want us to vaccinate, and so folks wouldn't be open to that. Just wondering your thoughts about that.
We're supposed to do something in the fall with a state, and I don't know, it's
It's
Idaho or
either
Iowa
Idaho
or
or
something.
Ohio. We don't feel we get the name of our booklet wrong all the time too, and it's embarrassing because it used to be just like vaccine for fears, and now it's vaccine fears overturned by facts, and we both pause and go, what's the name of our booklet? Because it was something else for the longest time.
Well, so it's, I don't know how to say it, but we don't even know the state. So it's gonna be pregnant women, and we're gonna talk about the importance of vaccines during pregnancy, but they're not offered pedicures or manicures or something. So it's an incentive. And then, if you kind of market it as, hear my raw thoughts as a parent, or if you are a parent, or, my true down-to-earth experience, and feel free to ask any question. I won't judge you whatsoever. You don't even have to view me as a doctor tonight. This is just, I'm your friend. Market it more from that instead of like, I'm a doctor. I'm answer questions, Yeah.
I'm Christina, I'm a pediatrician in Washington. One thing I do teach at one of the local medical schools, and it is not a vaccination. It is free. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I think that if we needed to teach, try to get students vaccines. The other thing is I try to be really educated about all the myths so that I have answers. But I have parents that turn to bring things to me that I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And I try my poker face, but how would you think somebody should respond if I really
I would just say I don't know. It's I've had, so as an anti-vaxxer, I had doctors make things up to try to cover the gap in their knowledge and see if I would take it. I think you're better off saying I don't know. And I'll find out for you. This is interesting. I'll find out.
I just have a quick comment. My name's Jenny and I'm also a pediatrician. And I always say, what have you heard? And that way I just know what you're afraid of and what are your fears. And I'm just gonna quickly say that my most successful moment didn't really make my visit any longer than it would have been. And it was a mom who told me that she wasn't getting the MMR for her child, even though there wasn't measles around, because she had heard the government was spraying measles into the airspace, just so we would get measles. And I said, well, I haven't heard that, but that is super scary. And really be no way to avoid it other than the vaccine. And my kids have gotten the vaccine and I got it and I haven't gotten, so maybe just this one, maybe we should just get that. We should get-
I wanted to say the last providers who spoke up, that's what we do at Boost Oregon. You can reach out to us with something for patients to us. I frequently tell people, if you don't know the answer to a question, I say exactly what you said with it. Just say, yeah, you know, I heard that. Usually you don't need to know the answer. You can say, actually, just like you did, like, it doesn't matter if that's true. Like, I know this other thing that might make your fear not relevant. Let me share that. But also, I'll get back to you. And you don't have to do the research. Just reach out to us. We do that, and we can send you into, like, here's, you know, how to develop that in a way that's
I'm sorry.
helpful. Let's do it.
I hear that a lot. We don't have enough time. I totally get that. You know, and I even asked, well, can we give them more time? It's apparently politics is kind of complicated. But when I was talking to y'all about aluminum, I can't not say y'all, but aluminum, it took me like one whole minute. So.
I'm also from Texas, and I say I embrace it. There's nothing wrong. It's easier than you guys. It's more inclusive. But yeah, I also find when you practice doing it and you get familiar with it, I often find it similar to what you said. It makes my visits shorter. If you start by listening and hearing the patient, then oftentimes it doesn't take that long and that much talking that you have to do to really help someone feel heard and then move forward better.
There is some research, I can't quote it or say, but I read that parents who change their mind like we have actually do have influence on anti-vaxxers who then go on to change their mind. And I think about that when I read like story after story after story when I was on the cusp of changing my mind. And that's why I wrote our book from our own perspectives on how we felt for it and why we realized we were wrong. Because we had to go through all of those tropes that we had so ingrained in our minds for years that we really did have to comb through that, and that's why we wrote our book the way we did, so that parents who were anti-vax could kind of maybe see themselves in it.
Thank you both so much. They're going to be here with us for the next 24 hours. So feel free to take the reins. We are adjusting the agenda a little bit because we really want you guys to have a hot lunch. So Benji and I are going to go after lunch, and lunch is ready for you guys. If you want to move into the other room, and then we'll come back here at 12:45. Do we want to stick to the timelines? Yeah, let's do 12:45. So come back in here at 12:45. Remember, lunch is for networking. Don't sit with the state and the people you know.